Okay. Hi everyone. As you know, we have a nice Monday evening in Finland at least webinar here, and I was able to get Francis here on a short notice. Thank you for coming, Francis. And I think most of people who are hearing this are probably familiar with your teaching, but there are some in the audience and probably many who will see the recording who have not heard of you. So could you briefly tell a little bit about yourself and your teaching in a very short way, if you will?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about what is not really myself, which is this body was born just during World War II and became an engineer, was married, had a child, and realized that although he had been successful by usual standards in his life, he was in fact miserable, and his life had been a failure. And then he came across some teachings by Krishnamurti, and that was a revelation that perhaps there was a solution to his misery. And he started studying Buddhism and non-dual scriptures. And then he decided that he needed a teacher. And then a teacher showed up. His name was John Klein, and that was in 1975. And from that moment on, this life has taken a different direction, and a beautiful and harmonious direction.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to ask you about, I remember you saying that you had an atheist upbringing.
Yeah.
And you also you liked Krishnamurti in the beginning because he was kind of pro-atheist, and then gradually or suddenly, I don't remember, but you went into the what you called the higher teachings. I would like to ask you, I think many people believe that this understanding requires certain beliefs, and I would like to hear, what is your view on this? Does the non-dual understanding require belief or not? How would you comment that?
It's quite the opposite, in fact. It's quite the opposite. It's not a religion. It is extremely minimalist. It's about the following question. Can we live our life solely based upon what we can be absolutely certain of? For instance, we cannot be absolutely certain that there is a world out there. Why? Because when we dream, we are not aware that we are dreaming. And right now, we could be dreaming. Therefore, we cannot be absolutely certain of whatever we are perceiving. I am seeing trees in the distance and houses, but it could be a dream. So I cannot be absolutely certain that what I'm seeing is not a dream-like illusion. However, even if it were the case that this is a waking dream of sorts, something is absolutely certain, is my awareness of the dream, and also that there is being, that there is existence, that there is something rather than nothing. So these are two absolute certainties. I am, there is, I am aware, they are one. Experientially, these three, I am, there is, and I am aware, these three facts boil down to one single experience. It is in the same experience that I know I am, that I know I am, there is consciousness, and that I know there is something rather than nothing. Everything else we cannot be absolutely certain of. So now, what is philosophy? Is philosophy about more knowledge? No. Why? Because we have better tools for knowledge, such as science. You know, that's why the famous physicist John Wheeler once said, philosophy is too important to be left to philosophers. And what he meant is that concepts such as time, space, scientists are better equipped to deal with this than philosophers. So what is the goal of philosophy? It is not more knowledge. The goal of philosophy, that's what the goal of ancient philosophy was, to know how to live a harmonious life. And the question then arises, can we live our life solely based upon what we know for certain and remaining in not knowing regarding the rest? It doesn't mean that we don't know how to drive, that we don't know how to program a computer, that we don't know how to grow plants and so on. This is obviously, these are useful tools. But in questions of life and death, these tools are useless. You know, so then that's when philosophy comes in. How to live a harmonious and happy life. And in the path here, the answer is, if only we could live our life solely based upon what we know for certain, and remaining in not knowing regarding the rest, that's the path to harmony, that's the path to happiness, and that's the path that has been discovered and taught by the sages throughout the ages and all over the world. Sufis, Buddhists, Zen, Taoists, Greek philosophers such as Parmenides, modern philosophers such as Spinoza.
So, an ordinary human being, I might think, might object to you saying that being or awareness is the only thing we can be certain of. So why is it the only thing we can be certain of?
Because the rest is not directly experienced.
And can you elaborate on that? What do you mean it is not directly experienced? For example, if I see an object like a tree or something,
yeah,
why is it not directly experienced?
Because all you see is your perception of the tree. For instance, if you and I are looking at the same tree, in fact, we see two different images, so we see two different things, right?
Yes.
Which means that neither of us sees the tree. Our direct experience is the direct experience of a perception of the tree But the tree remains forever invisible. We see only our perceptions of it. So we don't see the tree directly. I'm not denying that we see the perceptions. I'm denying that we see anything else than the perceptions.
Mm-hmm. And so why is this awareness or being aware of being aware, why is it different from the perception of the tree?
Because we have to ask ourselves, how do I know that I am conscious? Do I know that I am conscious because I've learned that from my parents? Or because I've learned that at school? Or do I know that for some kind of direct experience which is 100% certain? You see, I cannot be absolutely 100% certain that there is a tree out there. Because I could be dreaming, or I could be hallucinating.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
When I am hallucinating, I'm not sure that, I don't know that I am hallucinating. I see whatever I see. I hear whatever I hear. So, in the case of consciousness, I know it directly. In other words, I'm not aware that I am conscious because I see a tree. I am aware that I am conscious because somehow I see consciousness. It's very important to understand that. But I don't see consciousness through my eyes. I don't hear consciousness. I don't touch consciousness. Consciousness knows itself directly. And it is the only thing we know directly. That's why it is the only thing that we can be absolutely certain of. Because it is the only thing that we have first-hand knowledge of.
And how would you explain the experience of awareness in situations where you are under an anesthetic or you hit your head and you lose ordinary consciousness? And this, for many people, seem to be if these are not investigated, they seem to be proof that the nature of awareness or awareness is lost in those moments. So how would you respond to that?
Okay. First, let's talk about your last night sleep. Do you remember much of last night?
No.
Does it mean that you were not conscious?
It is clear to me that I know that I am, and there was this I amness or awareness also present in deep sleep, because I am absolutely certain that I existed, or that there was beingness. So yes, that is indeed, in the case of deep sleep, that is for me absolutely clear that there is this continuity.
If I ask you, what did you eat for breakfast? Exactly 2 years ago, day per day, the same day, on the same date, 1 year ago, you would say, I don't remember unless you eat the same thing for breakfast every day. But other than that, you say, I don't remember. But will you say, I wasn't conscious 1 year ago? Obviously not.
Obviously not, no.
So the fact that we have no memories of something doesn't mean we were not conscious. So the fact that we have no memories of what happened to us during deep sleep or during anesthesia. Doesn't mean that there was no consciousness. That's one thing. Number two, if someone makes the claim that there is no awareness during deep sleep or that there is no awareness during anesthesia, do they make this claim out of an educated guess, or do they make this claim out of experience? Because if they say, we make this claim that there is no awareness during deep sleep from experience, it requires some consciousness of the absence of awareness, which defeats the argument, right?
Yes.
So, this position, according to which someone makes the claim that experientially they know that there is no awareness during deep sleep, they are kidding themselves.
Yes.
In fact, they infer the absence of awareness from the absence of memory of the event. The absence of, but as we have said earlier, the absence of memory doesn't imply. Let's give me another example. This person is in the hospital and in a very, very life-threatening situation, in a coma, that no responsive whatsoever to the doctor. And the doctor says, okay, this person is unconscious, right? And 2 days later, this person comes out of the coma. And this person says, oh, I had this dream where, no, I had this experience, this experience through which I went through a tunnel. See, there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and there was this beauty, and I felt this life. And I saw all my past, all the reality flying back in front of my eyes. It was so beautiful. Then I had to come back. So that shows that there are two kinds of experience. Third person experience, the experience of the doctors and the nurse in the emergency room where this patient is. And then there is the first experience of this person. So that's so important to notice that these two experiences are completely different, and that establishes two definitions of consciousness: a third person definition and a first person definition. And obviously, if we ask ourselves, which one does matter to me? We don't care about the third person experience of consciousness. The only one we care about is the first person consciousness. So that's the one which matters. And that's the one we are talking about here. You see? And this distinction has to be clearly understood, because constantly in the culture we live in, the first person understanding of consciousness, or the first person definition of consciousness, is put under the rug and replaced by the third person hypothetical, conceptual, under a non-experiential definition of consciousness.
Yeah.
So that's very important, because this distinction between first person consciousness and third person consciousness, when we see clearly that they are different, that they are completely different experiences. So whatever is observed from a third person perspective doesn't tell us much about the first person perspective. In particular, it doesn't tell us that the first person perspective has a beginning and has an end. It doesn't tell us that the first person perspective is limited in space or time or in any fashion or form, you see? In order to have a say about that, we have to refer to our own experience of consciousness. And our own experience of consciousness is this immediate, instantaneous experience through which we know we are conscious. And we can ourselves ask the question from that experience, do we know that we are limited? Do we know that we had a beginning in time? Do we remember our beginning? Can we make the statement that we have a beginning? Can we make the statement that we have an end? Can we make the statement that we are limited? And if we go to this experience of consciousness, we get the answer to this question. We cannot make any statement of this kind. We replace it with a big I don't know. So what it boils down to is this. I know that I am, but I don't know what I am. I don't know the modalities. I don't know, because any modalities of me would be a limitation of me. That the beauty is of this not knowing what I am is, if you will, a pointer that points at my borderlessness, at my eternity, at my universality, and if you will, in religious terms, at my divinity as consciousness. It points at the divinity of consciousness.
Yeah, I remember when I read Ramana Maharshi and I first understood that I knew with absolute certainty that I didn't disappear in deep sleep, and that led to that experience that there is this continuous field of awareness. And already then I can't say that the realization of the universality of consciousness was there, but I sort of logically deduced that if there is this field that I have no proof of it ever beginning or changing, it's probable that the sages who say that consciousness is universal, they're probably onto something. But yeah, it's at this point we have this sort of elegant way of referring to ourselves and to our immediate experience and to the undeniable fact of being. And then we can conclude that memory is a poor evidence and we cannot trust it. So we could say with absolute certainty that we lose consciousness in situations like anesthesia. And then we can come to that, I don't know what I am. And I think this I learned directly from your teaching, because I kind of thought we have to jump into that I am universal, but I immediately recognized from your teaching that there is this very nice second step, this I don't know what I am. So can you talk about what that second step opens? What kind of possibilities? What does it feel like to live life with that I don't know what I am? So, because that's, I think, very significant in your teaching.
Yes, because people usually, they believe, oh, I want to see my universality. I want to touch it. I want to hear it. I want to experience it, for instance, in the form of special powers. But we have to understand that if we could see it, it would be limited. And therefore, it would be a fake universality. Our true universality, if it is truly universal, truly unlimited, has to remain invisible. In other sense, we have to be both nothing and everything. We can never be something and not everything. You see, that's very, very powerful to understand that. And now, what is important also is to understand that there is only one reality. Because really, up until now, we have spoken mostly about consciousness. And that is because consciousness is the way. Consciousness is the path that leads to the experience of reality. Because a consciousness is our reality as a human experience. Consciousness is the reality of our human experience. That we can verify it easily. Because the reality of something has to be there always with the thing. Like the reality of a golden ring. The gold has to be there always when the ring is there. It doesn't mean that in other words, you cannot have this ring without the gold, that is its substance. But you can have the gold without the ring. Before the ring, there was the gold. After the ring, there is going to be the gold. So the reality of a thing has to be always present when the thing is present. So if what we call the thing, in this case, is our human experience, the reality of our human experience has to be whatever it is that is always present throughout our human experience. So for instance, our body is not a good candidate for our reality because our body disappears quite often when we read a book, when we dream, when we undergo anesthesia. Whereas consciousness is always present. So consciousness is the reality of our human experience. In other words, consciousness being the reality of our human experience, consciousness is the experience of what we are. Consciousness is our experienced reality. So once we have understood that, of course, there is this world around there. We perceive it, we interact with it. Not only through the act of perception, but also through our activities, through also deriving information from it. So we have both an informational and an energetic interaction with the world. But interaction means connection. So it means that whatever we are, our reality, is the same as the reality of the world we interact with. That's very important. My reality and the reality of the world is the same reality. And of course, it is the same reality of the reality of all beings. It's very important. There is only one reality, experientially. There is only one reality. If we make the claim that there are more than two realities, it's not validated by experience.
No.
It can be useful. It can be useful. That's what we always do in science. In science, we talk about interactions, right? In quantum field theory, it's about interacting, a quantum field interacting. So in the Lagrangian, the terms that define interactions are basically the most important. So, but if there is interaction, it means that there is a common reality. It means, for instance, in the realm of physics, that all all physical fields share a same reality. In this case, it is understood to be a Minkowski space-time, but okay, let's go away from that. This human reality interacts with the world. Therefore, the reality of this human experience and the reality of the universe is the same. That's the conclusion. We don't need to go into physics for that, but I like to do some off-roading for our friends who can understand what I mean. It's very important because we have also this deep intuition that there is only one reality. Without going into philosophy or into science, everybody has this deep intuition of connection, of interconnection, of a whole of life, a whole of the universe, a wholeness of life, the wholeness of the universe. Only one reality. Now, if there is only one reality, it implies that our reality, which, as we have seen, is experienced as consciousness, has to be the reality of the world, the reality of all beings. Therefore, that this consciousness is shared by all beings, and that's the experience of love. The experience of love is on the level of feelings, the experience that I and the other share the same reality. Just as the experience of beauty is the experience in terms of the senses that the world is my body. The absence of borders, the absence of limits, erasing the borders. If you look at Cézanne painting an apple, with a dark line, he indicates the contour of the apple, but he doesn't close the contour. He leaves a little segment open. It is an open apple to the universe. It enables the apple to be part of the painting, of the rest, that everything merges together, that nothing is closed, everything is interrelated. And that is that which, in part, one of the elements that touches us, this oneness of all things.
And so the discussion so far, I'm going to assume that most minds who are open to this are now satisfied that consciousness, the universality of consciousness is at least a strong candidate, and that this what you spoke last, that we all share the same reality, and this is how we are able to interact. It makes a lot of sense, but so a little provocative question: what does this have to do with happiness and living well?
We have to look at the party pooper in our life. The party pooper is the fear of absolute disappearance. We have inherited this fear both from our chromosomes and from our surroundings. From our chromosomes, because as a result of the evolution, we have been wired through our genes. We have been wired for the survival of this body and for the survival of the species. So we have mechanisms in the body of protection, of ourselves and of the other members of the tribe, of the pack, of the herd. These mechanisms are very present in us, but if we look at an animal, they are triggered in the animal in case of a clear and present danger. But then, as soon as the alert is over, they go back to stillness. In our case, we have also this additional instrument, which is a brain, right? The ability to project ourselves into the future. And the problem is that if we identify consciousness with the body, we project ourselves in the future. And there is danger, and there is in fact the certainty, ultimately, of the demise of this body. So then, this state of alert, of clear and present danger, becomes constant, it becomes chronic, you see. The reason why it becomes chronic is because of the identification of what we are truly consciousness with the body. When that stops, that ceases to be the case, it doesn't mean we are no longer the manager of our body, but there is a distance. Just as if there is a suspicious sound while in the engine of the car, we take the engine to the dealership for inspection and repair. Same thing with the body. But the end of the body is not the end of ourselves. We are not ultimately afraid. You see what I mean? We are perhaps afraid, well, if it is a transmission, it may cost a lot of money, right? Especially if I have an expensive car. But that's not a real fear. You see, I am not involved in it. It's not the fear, the end of the car is not the end of me. The party pooper is not there when we talk about our car. It is different when we talk about our body. Because as long as we are in ignorance, the party pooper is always present. And it is very difficult to envision what life is when the party pooper has left. The image I use is when you are a teenager and you are organizing the party in the house. The party poopers are the parents, you know. You want the parents out of the house. If you have a party, and if the parents are in their bedroom upstairs, the party is not that great, you see.
No.
When you're an adult, you know, and the parents are on the other side of the world, right, or on the other side of the country, then the party pooper is not there. So then the party is very different. So here, life is the party with and without the party pooper. When you still have the party pooper, it's difficult to envision what life is without the party pooper, other than, you know, yeah, it would be nice. It would be nice if I was not afraid that the parents are going to intrude and put an end to the party, you know, stop the music and stop the boozing and stop everything, you know. And all the friends are going to leave. And I'll be stuck there, miserable. So it's very difficult to envision that. But once you have tasted a party without the party pooper, you know, let's say you have been invited to another party, right? And the parents were not present. And it was quite different, right? Then you become really interested in getting rid of the party pooper.
Yeah. So most people would if I told them that what you are actually afraid of is the total disappearance, or they would probably say that no, I'm afraid that I don't get a better salary, or I'm afraid that I can't have children in the future, or I'm afraid that this or that won't happen to me, or this or that will happen to me. How does these kinds of statements link to this party pooper theory that you've presented?
Then I could tell these people, okay, you are telling me that not having children, not having money, or this is your problem, and not the fear of death. I have a very simple solution for you. Just kill yourself. End of the problem. Understand that what I've just said is not an apology of suicide. It's a philosophical argument, let's be clear. But it's an argument that places us in front of the reality that we were escaping. People who say, I'm not afraid of death, but I'm afraid of not having enough money. They are kidding themselves, because in fact, the reasoning is, if I don't have enough money, I won't be able to navigate in this world. I won't be loved by other people. I will be banned from the tribe. I will be left alone in the dark, in the cold, without help, to die. So at the end of all these desires for fame, money, sex, whatever, at the end of that, there is a me afraid to disappear. But I go back to the philosophical response. You tell me you have a problem with money, and not a problem with killing yourself, and not a problem with dying. Simple, kill yourself, end of the money problem. But I'm not suggesting to do that. I'm just calling your bluff. Not a bluff that you are telling me, but you are bluffing yourself. You are kidding yourself.
Yeah, I think that personally I was commuting to work on a train, and I had a little of backache, and I was like, I should probably stretch a little bit here. And then it suddenly became clear to me that why I don't do that is because I'm afraid of what other people would think of me. And ultimately that links to that fear of death, because there seems to be a connection with this. I'm afraid that what other people think of me, because they might abandon me and I might be left alone in the cold and in the dark. So yeah, so but this isn't I wanted to talk about this because this isn't very clear always, that what we really are afraid of is this total disappearance. So how do you suggest, or I can pretty easily see going to this I am awareness, and then I don't know what I am, and we've also discussed what this has to do with our core fear. But what would you say are the, I don't know if you call them steps, but from the openness, the I don't know what I am, to this sort of full understanding of universality, how does one navigate that?
Well, there are two paths, the direct path and the phenomenal path. And in fact, we simultaneously navigate on both paths. The direct path is when we go to this glimpse of consciousness. In this moment, the experience of consciousness contains everything. In other words, it is not limited to our immortality. In this experience through which we know that we are immortal as consciousness, we know also that we are absolute happiness, absolute love, absolute intelligence, absolute beauty. It is not that all of these qualities are experienced in a serial fashion. In this glimpse, everything is given. That's a direct experience. And then this experience resonates in the body-mind structure and starts reorganizing it. This reorganization is not accomplished with one single glimpse. It's a succession of glimpses that become more and more frequent, that gradually reharmonizes the entire psychosomatic structure. That's the direct path, glimpse after glimpse after glimpse. And then the indirect path, or which I call the phenomenal path, is our conducting experiments in life. In other words, trying to live our life from the vantage point that consciousness is universal, that our reality is universal. Now, every time we make this attempt to live our life from this new perspective, there is going to be an outcome both in the world, in the events in the world, and also internally in terms of happiness, externally in terms of serendipity, meaning that internally increased harmony and externally increased harmony. And it is this outcome, every time we take this new position, that also experiment after experiment will build a body of evidence that consciousness is universal. So the first path, the direct path, is every time at the glimpse, we see it, we know it, we are it. We are this universal consciousness knowingly. And then that is the immediate path. And then the mediate path is by living our life in the world with our friends, with our loved ones, with the events that happen to us, with our thoughts, with our bodily sensations, with our sense perception, all of that. The outcome of this new way of relating to all of that, to others, to feelings, to thoughts, creates a gradually increased conviction that consciousness is universal.
Yeah. So if we accept that consciousness is universal, at least on a preliminary basis, and we live our life, I can say that, for example, for me, this kind of inquiry, self-inquiry, and this kind of, it only took me so far, but then I had to sort of started to play the role, and there was more feel like there was suddenly it tasted more, so to speak, and that was of course a very sort of clear signal. So at least for me, I'd say that courage plays some part in it, that
Yes.
one gives the insights a chance to prove themselves.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. So as the universal being and free from the fear of extinction or death, how does this understanding relate to what is usually called normal living, relationships, hobbies? How does this understanding change our ordinary lives?
Everything is seen as everything which is objective points towards this presence, which is peace and love and happiness and beauty. So whatever is perceived phenomenally is not really important in and by itself. It is just a pointer that reveals this presence beyond words, beyond imagination. It's a different take on life. And this different take on life, strangely enough, changes life. This new perspective on the events changes the upcoming events. It's remarkable. And this change in the upcoming events is itself proof of the universality of consciousness. It's like a God telling us, yes, you're on the right track. Just as increased suffering is God telling us, no, don't go there. You don't want to go there.
And just for the clarification, you use the word God synonymously to awareness or consciousness, or
Yes, it is not a personal God. It is more the God of Spinoza, the reality of all things.
yeah.
It is not personal, but it is consciousness, you see.
Yeah. So why do you think so relatively few people on the planet are interested in this? And I'm going to explain my question, because often it is said that something happens, suffering creates this kind of interest in something, and you get a glimpse. But what do you think that is there also this kind of, does humanity have a larger opportunity to now to investigate this, because these clear formulations that don't require belief in deities or such? So I'm interested in what do you think, what qualifies someone to be interested in the non-dual teaching, or is there such qualifications?
No, there are no real. There are no real prerequisites. In other words, it doesn't require to be to have a very powerful brain, or to be talented, to have a very flexible body, or to be very young, or very healthy. You know, there is this saying, I think, which goes, spirit blows wherever it wants, you know. It's a mystery. In a sense, it's a mystery, but because you are asking the question from a third-person perspective, you see? And again, the third-person perspective is the wrong perspective always. The only interesting question is the one we ask ourselves. So let's put it this way. Third perspective question is, why are some people in ignorance of their true nature, ignorance being used here in a very specific meaning, why are so many people convinced to be separate entities, and a few others like you be certain that it is not the case? That's a third-person question. The real question is a first-person question. Why do I believe to be a separate entity? That's what it boils down to. And then, if we ask deeply this question, we discover, number one, that we have zero evidence to be a separate and limited consciousness. We have zero evidence. We have only fake evidence, which, upon investigation, reveals itself to be bogus. And then, if we keep asking the question, why do I still believe to be a separate entity in spite of the total absence of evidence? The only answer is because I choose to believe that way. Ignorance at that moment becomes optional. But when it becomes optional, we discover by the same token that it has always been optional. So then, if we go back to the third person question, then we have the answer. Because it seems to be unfair that some people are interested in the truth and other people are not. But then, when we have investigated from the first person vantage point and discovered our inherent freedom to choose ignorance or not choose ignorance, what is true for us or of us is true of everybody else. You see? Because it is the same consciousness in all beings that choose to play the game of ignorance or not to do so. So at that moment, ignorance in others ceases to be seen as problematic. You see, it is what it is. It is what it is. It is the game I, as consciousness, play through all these avatars in terms, of computer games. So then you could ask, but Francis, what are you then speaking about it? And my answer is, because I enjoy it. Because I'm like a bird singing on its branch, and the bird doesn't care very much whether they are either birds or human beings or whatever in the forest, listening to his song and enjoying it. It's like when you sing in your shower. That's my universal shower.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it does seem rather impolite not to mention it to anyone if you sort of have found this unlimited being or happiness. So it seems to me that at least be polite to ask someone else if they are interested in it. So well, I think we covered really the important topics here, and I love this clarity that this teaching reveals, and I hope that our listeners have enjoyed this clarity as well. And I don't have any more questions, Francis. I just want to thank you for doing this on such a short notice, and as always, the answers were accurate and illuminating. Do you wish to say something? Do you have anything to add?
No, but regarding the final thought, not the final thought, but what we are talking about, it is very important to understand that ignorance ultimately doesn't matter. From the vantage point of the teachers or the so-called teacher, ignorance is not a problem. And that's precisely that which makes the teaching efficient. Because someone comes with ignorance and says, oh, that's a big problem. Imagine I would answer, I agree with you. You are in big trouble. Ignorance is a big problem. Only a few in the world have ever been able to liberate themselves from this problem. And, statistically, your case doesn't look too good. Whereas if I come from the place, which is the place, ignorance is not a problem. You see? Then there is a path. When, as I told you, I started with Krishnamurti. So we are going to end where I started. I started with Krishnamurti. And however, the reason why he was what they call in India my Upaguru. He was a teacher who led me into the truth, and as you have heard me say before, because of my atheistic and scientific upbringing, I was not ready for anything that would feel like being religious. The word God was in my family a big profanity, so it was never uttered. So Krishnamurti would say, okay, religions, don't trust them, gurus, don't trust them. So for me, it was acceptable. So that's that which enabled me, to become interested in the truth. But there was a problem with Krishnamurti as I kept reading his books. And it is that you got the impression that he had accessed a state or an experience, but that nobody among the thousands of followers he had, that nobody had got it, you see. And so I was thinking, well, it's such a hard undertaking. I will never be able to get there. And that was a problem for me, up until I met my teacher. And I remember the first year, few months after my first meeting, we were in Switzerland, in the mountains. And I mentioned this problem I had with Krishnamurti. And he said, when I met my teacher, I asked him three questions. Number one, are you happy? Yes. Number two, does your happiness depend on anything, health, wealth? No. Third question, can you take me there? Yes. And when I heard this yes, immediately everything seemed so easy. Because for my teacher, ignorance was not a problem. It was easy. It was easy. It was, okay, you want to see what is on the side of the mountain? Let's, tomorrow, let's take a walk up there. I've been there. I can show you. No big problem. You see. And that is this, what makes the transmission possible, is that the teacher doesn't distance himself from the disciple. He doesn't see himself as different. He doesn't see himself or herself as a teacher.
Yeah.
He sees himself as conscious, and he sees the student or the truth seeker as consciousness. And it's easy because from that vantage point, there is never a problem.
Yeah. I have to ask one somewhat personal question because it came to my mind. After I met you in last July, these sort of old, like micro dysfunctional habits, like my big problems like addictions, they've gone years ago, but there have been these like really rooted bad habits, and they just seem to like go. And it also seems like there's this tipping point that all sufferings just seems to collapse. So the question is this something that happens when we meet a live teacher, or it seems like it's those really rooted habits that are probably there because there are these rooted beliefs in separation. So something happened that just sort of, they just all went in, like I didn't have to do anything. So perhaps this is the final question that, yeah, I would like your comment on that.
Actually, I will make two comments briefly. One is that in my own case, when I became interested in these issues, in the beginning, it was because I had a psychological problem. I was shy in in a social context. And what I understood through this interaction with Krishnamurti and my teacher is that this shyness was only one of the symptoms of a deeper illness, which was ignorance. And from that moment on, I stopped trying to do anything to get rid of my shyness. And perhaps 2 years after meeting my teacher, so it was 4 years after becoming interested in the truth, one day I noticed, oh, most of it, 90% of it has disappeared without me doing anything, for it to disappear. That's the first comment I will make. And the second comment is my teacher, Jean Klein. He was in India and he met his teacher there. And one day, 6 months after his first meeting with his teacher, he was in his 40s then, he realized how big a change had occurred in his life over the last 6 months since his meeting with his teacher. And it seemed to him that up until that moment, over the previous 40 few years, that he had been like stagnant, and that all of a sudden everything accelerated. And the thought that came to him, such a change can only be attributed to the meeting with a real guru. You see?
Yeah, Yeah, I understand, because it seemed that this understanding had been somehow in place, but after the retreat, it just, I don't know, it's like you said, like it seems like it's 10 times the force that, and it's enough that these sort of like old habits also clear. So just wanted to get your final comment on that. Yeah. Well, thank you, Francis. I think this was a really good session, and I really enjoyed talking with you, and it was wonderful, and I'll see you in Paris.
See you in Paris. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, goodbye.